Hi all, welcome to part 3 of the making of a Rooikat bow by EBC Bows. I hope you enjoyed the previous 2 videos. If you haven't watched them yet, I would suggest that you go back to part 1 and start with part 1, then part 2, just so everything makes sense as we go along. In part 3 we will be making the limbs. I will be showing you how to cut the limb wedges and also how the glue up of the limbs work. That'll give you a very good idea of things to watch out for and what you should and shouldn't do when building the limbs. Hope you enjoy it. Let me know what you think in the comments and I'll see you guys soon. Hi, we're back again. So the next step will be to cut the wedges that will go into the limb where the limb bolts will go through. For this purpose I've prepared myself a little, or made myself a little jig that slides over my guide, and that's already cut at the right angle. And that helps me to do this process easily and efficiently. Okay, so that's the first one. The second one. Now this is just a rough cut. We'll be finishing them off with a drum sander to get them to exactly the shape and size we want. Okay, so the next step is to put them through the drum sander just to get the final taper correct. So for this purpose I've made myself a little jig with the right angle already in it, so I just push it through and it grinds it to the right angle that I want and nice and flat as well. Okay, so we're basically ready for the glue up. Important, before you glue the parts together, I clean all of the parts using acetone and a clean cloth. This is to ensure that there's no dust left over on the laminations. I did not bore you with making the laminations, which is just the process of taking 5mm of the timber and then flattening it down until it's the right thickness. Now for a 40-pound bow I would typically make the thick end of the taper 2.3mm, and then the thin end of the taper I would make around about 0.9mm, and that usually gives me more or less a 40-pound bow. Hi everyone, I realized when I was editing the video that I would actually be amiss if I didn't include this part, and while of preparing the limbs, and while I can't go back and show you how I prepared the actual laminations for the Rooikat we are building in this bow build video, I decided to excuse me, frog in my throat. I decided to include a video of me making a set of limbs or preparing the laminations for a set of limbs so that aspiring bowyers can learn from that. So the first step in preparing the laminations would be to actually cut them to length. In this case I'm using 5mm bamboo. I buy the sheets in 5mm. It's the vertical construction bamboo sheets, where they actually take the bamboo planks, laminate them together next to each other and then cut them into 5mm sheets. So I start off with a 5mm. In the case of the Rooikat that we were building, I would start with a 5mm cut piece of the actual timber that I use for the riser of the Rooikat. But in this case I'm using bamboo because that is what we'll be using for the bow that I'm busy making the limbs for. So as I said, the first step is to cut all the laminations to length. Okay, so here we have the 4 pieces cut to length now. The next step would be to put it through the thickness planer and then through the thickness sander or the drum sander to get it to exactly the right thickness. The template that I use is pre-cut to exactly the right taper, so when I put it through, it'll finish the workpiece at exactly the right taper. I've covered the template with strips of my belt sander sanding belt, so that it's got a nice grip when putting it through the planer. It grips the workpiece well, and you can put it through the planer and the workpiece doesn't slide around on the template. I'll see you at the next step. The next step will be planing. So I've preset the thickness planer to more or less the right required height. I'll be pushing through the workpieces now to get them to close to what I want before I put it on the belt sander or the drum sander to just finish it off. I'll be rotating the pieces with every pass through just to get them equally planed away on either side, and I'm going to do this until I get to the required thickness. Okay, so now I've taken them all down to close to the required thickness, and I'll be putting them through the drum sander to get them to exactly the right thickness. Okay, so now I'll be putting it through the drum sander. I've pre-set up the drum sander to the first thickness that I want to take all of the work pieces to, and then I'll slowly but surely be adjusting it and going thinner and thinner until I'm at exactly the right thickness. This is a very slow and meticulous process. You want to make sure that your workpiece is absolutely flat when going through the drum sander, so that you've got equal thickness from left to right through your lamination. Else you would have a problem that the lamination would twist, where the one piece is a bit thinner than the other. Okay, so that was the process of putting them through the drum sander. The laminations are now at the right thickness and they are ready for the glue up. So now we'll continue with the Rooikat video with the gluing up of the limbs. So again, take all the parts. You'll see that the action glass, I have taken the smooth side of the action glass and I've covered it with your trusty old duct tape, just so that no glue goes onto the smooth part, which will be the outside of your limbs. It also protects the glass against scratches and the such during the whole process. So very important, take the pieces, the individual pieces, and clean them thoroughly. Now the limb wedges that we made earlier, I just need to inform you to when you're finishing off the limb wedges, to make sure that the thin end literally tapers to a 0. So you want to keep on thinning it out until the thin part is at 0 millimeters and then tapers outwards. The reason for this is so that you get a good glue joint where the two pieces of the timber joins up with the wedge. If you don't do this, we call it feathering. So you literally grind it down until it's so thin that it's literally see-through. You won't be able to see it on the camera now, but it's actually see-through when I hold it up against the light, and that ensures that I've got a very thin joint. The belly and the back of the bow actually joins up. Again, make sure that you take all of the dust due to the grinding process out, and otherwise this might lead to your bow failing due to your glue binding with the dust instead of with the timber. Also, make sure to clean your workspace thoroughly so that there's no dust lying around, so that once you've actually cleaned them with the acetone. And we use acetone simply because it's very effervescent. It evaporates very quickly, so it doesn't actually wet the timber, it just takes the dust off nicely. If you look there, you can see how much dust is actually still coming off these tapers, and that would cause the bow to fail if you don't take that off. I also rotate the cloth a bit and use a clean piece every now and then, just to make sure that I don't actually transfer that old dust that I took off the previous part onto the next part. Make sure to clean both sides. One step that is very important to keep in mind is that when you're preparing the limb tapers or the limb veneers, that you actually use a very coarse sandpaper on your drum sander. Personally, I use a 40 grit, and this ensures that I've got a nice rough surface so that the adhesive has plenty of space to get a grip on the timber. Otherwise, this could also, if it's too smooth, the epoxy EA40 that I use will not bind to it properly, and then you might get a limb separation at some stage, or delamination it's also called. So in this case, the client opted for matching veneers. So I use the timber for the veneer is the same timber that I used for the riser itself, which just gives you a nicely matching bow at the end of the day. Okay, so now all the parts are clean. Now I'm going to be mixing my EA40 adhesive. So when mixing the EA40 adhesive, it's important to remember that you mix it by volume and not by weight. So equal parts of adhesive and the activator to make sure that you get a good strong bind. So I found that 15 milliliters of each part of the adhesive gives me a good enough glue to glue up one limb without having too much wastage. So I'll be mixing 15 mils at a time. So to mix the glue in, I buy these little disposable containers, very thin plastic, and then I mix my glue up in that, and then I chuck it away once I'm done. So I'm basically using disposable tongue suppressors as well to get all of the glue out of the little 15 mil measuring spoon that I have. So this yellow is actually the activator, and then I use a different measuring cup for the adhesive, and the other side of the tongue suppressor. So I make sure that it's nice and flush and equal parts. sure that you get it all out of the measuring spoon. Make sure that you've got equal parts. Now, it's not absolutely crucial that it be exactly 15 mils each, but the closer you are to exact amounts, the better. So a lot of people like to use an applicator that EA40 also supplies. Personally, I found that I can put a nice thin layer of the adhesive on the part that I want to glue by using these scrapers. So very important to mix your glue through very well. The instructions say 5 minutes. I found that that's not quite necessary, as long as you make sure that it is thoroughly mixed. I think the 5 minutes might be for larger amounts or larger quantities of the glue. Make sure that you get the individual parts that accumulate on the edges, that you get that mixed in as well. You don't want a piece of your bow only having a bit of the activator instead of having the mixed glue, or just glue without the activator. So I make sure that I get the edges nice and mixed in there. And there we go. Basically, once you have an even color throughout the adhesive, so there's no darker lines where the two haven't joined yet, then you're ready to do your glue up. You'll see I've got an old piece of timber here. Actually, it's a Formica or a melamine board that I use to do my glue up, and then I just clean that afterwards with water. So you want to get that spread nice and evenly and not too thick, because if there's too much glue, it will simply press out once you inflate your tube to clamp the workpieces together. Especially while you're doing this part, make sure that there's no dust particles that somehow made their way. Workshops are dusty places, so make sure that there's no dust particles in your adhesive before you push everything together. So I like to do, instead of just doing one part after the other, I like to do the two outsides first, so that there's a bit of time for the air in the timber to escape. Otherwise you might end up with bubbles underneath the glass, which don't really cause any problems, but they don't look nice. So we try and do that to prevent any air bubbles to form underneath the glass. Is ready to go into the mold. So for the next part, I actually use the tape that has the little fiberglass fibers in them, as this is nice and strong and it keeps the piece down until I can put the rest of the mold on. This fiberglass tape actually just keeps it nicely in position while you put the tape on, the tube on that you're going to be inflating. Once I've put it in place, I then wrap it in the plastic wrap again. This is just your normal pallet wrap. They're inexpensive and protect your tools nicely. Once that is done, I put these little washers in place to keep everything aligned while I inflate the water hose or fire hose that I use as a flexible clamp. So this is a fire hose that I've had some end plugs made up with a tire valve on the one side. This goes into your mold over the workpiece, and your second part of the molds put in place. Once this is done, I'll make sure that all the edges are nice and aligned, and then we can inflate it. I first inflate it to about 3 bar, leave it for a little while, and then I inflate it some more. So personally, I like to inflate mine to about between 4 and 4.5 bar, and then it is ready to go into the oven. So in the interest of not making this a very long, tedious video to watch, I'm not going to show you the glue up of the second limb. It's going to be exactly the same as the first one, and for the next take I'll see you when I'm ready to start shaping the limbs when they come out of the oven. Okay, it's been 4 hours. And I've taken the first limb out of the oven. We're going to be taking it out of the mold now, and then we'll start to shape it. I'll just cut the plastic that I wrapped around the mold, as well as the fiberglass tape that I used to secure the limbs to the mold. And then it just slides out. So there we have the first limb out of the mold. Now you'll see the excess glue has spread out over here. So what I do is I just break that off. Sometimes just use the back of a screwdriver just to knock that a bit. Do be careful with this, as these are quite thin and can easily cut you. They can be quite sharp. Okay, in the areas where the spaces are for the to keep the steel away from the workpiece, the steel that supports the top part of the mold, there's a bit of thicker glue, and that I'll be grinding off and just cleaning this limb up so that it's same width as the fiberglass, and then we can draw the shape on it and start getting it to its final shape. I'm just going to take the other one out as well. It's not necessary to have two molds. I simply made two exactly the same molds to spare me some time, or to save some time, as I can then get two limbs into the oven at once. But before I had these made, or before I made them, I used to use just one, and I would just repeat the process. But obviously then your time between the two limbs takes 8 hours to make two limbs, where now it only takes 4. So yeah, anything to speed up the process. And there we have our two limbs. So I'll be cleaning them up now, and then I'll be cutting out this shape. What I do is I cut the shape into the top part of the duct tape, and then basically just remove everything that doesn't have duct tape on it to make the basic shape of the limb. Hi guys, thanks for watching part 3. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. Let me know in the comments what you think. If you have any questions, as I mentioned before, you're welcome to contact me at the contact details in the video, at the end of the video. And you are also welcome to just ask some questions in the comments. I will be checking in on each video every now and then to see if there are any questions out there. Enjoy your bow making. I hope these videos help. See you in part 4, where we'll be shaping the limbs for the Rooikat bow. Enjoy. Cheers.